Imagine this. Your neighbor calls the fire department on your perfectly legal fire pit, claiming it's a safety hazard. You're furious, but instead of reacting out of anger, you play it smart. And what happens next is something she never saw coming. Want to find out how I turned the tables and exposed her hypocritical fire safety violations? Stay tuned, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more jaw-dropping stories like this. The fire was crackling just right beneath the soft hum of summer crickets, and the warm flicker of flames danced across the faces of my friends. As we passed around skewers of marshmallows and sipped beer from frosted bottles, the scent of pine and smoke curled into the air, wrapping around us like a comforter. The laughter was easy and real. For once, the weight melted off my shoulders. I leaned back in my lawn chair and let the heat from the fire pit soak into my skin. Then the sirens cut through the air at first. I thought they were going somewhere else. Red and white lights bounced off the fences and trees until they were too close to ignore. The fire truck rolled to a slow stop in front of my house, and my gut clenched. My friends went quiet. I stood quickly, heart hammering in my chest, as two firefighters stepped out and approached. One of them scanned our little gathering and then his eyes landed on the fire pit. "Evening, sir. We received a call about an open flame, possibly out of control. It hit me like a punch. My mouth opened, but nothing came out for a moment. Then I said, 'This is a certified gas fire pit. It's contained. It's meant for residential use. We're not doing anything illegal.' Before he could respond, I heard her voice, sharp and smug, like nails dragging across metal. I told them it was a fire hazard. There she stood across the street, in her driveway, wearing a pastel sweater draped over her shoulders like a cape, and holding a phone in her hand, like a trophy. Kerren, the self-appointed guardian of the block. She stared at me with this expression like she had caught a criminal. Her blonde bob barely moved as she tilted her head in mock concern. "I saw the flames from my kitchen window," she said. "You know those things can spark and catch grass, or trees on fire, and God forbid it spreads to the homes." I could feel my fists clench. My friends exchanged looks, but no one dared speak. Kerren had filed complaints before about my Halloween decorations, which she claimed traumatized children, about my recycling bin, which she insisted I had wheeled out past the HOA-approved time about. My dog barking, even though it only barked when she walked by with that smug little poodle she dressed in sweaters. She had a long, proud history of policing the neighborhood for crimes that only existed in her head. The firefighter looked back at me, then at the pit. He walked closer, inspected it, then stood up and gave a short nod. "It's up to code and contained. There's no violation here, but if we get repeated calls, we'll be obligated to report it to code enforcement." I nodded stiffly. "Understood." Kerren smiled. She actually smiled like she had just won something. She turned and walked back to her porch heels, clicking on the concrete like she was a runway model instead of a suburban tattletale. The fire truck left shortly after, and the moment it did, the air felt heavier. The fun was gone. The evening over, one of my friends patted me on the back and said, "Man, that woman needs a hobby." Another muttered, "I'm not even surprised." Everyone left within the next 15 minutes. I didn't blame them. The mood had died and been buried with sirens. I stayed behind and sat back down in my chair alone now. The fire still burned, but its warmth felt different now, less comforting, more like a reminder, a symbol. I stared into the flames. I watched the logs shift and crackle. Kerren thought she won. She thought she had control. But she didn't know me. Not really. I had tried to ignore her before, tried to be civil. But that night, I realized civility only works with civil people. She didn't want peace. She wanted power. She wanted to dictate. She wanted the whole neighborhood to bow to her twisted sense of order. The fire hissed as a log split. And just like that, something inside me hardened. She wanted to play games. Fine, I would play, but not her kind of game. Not the passive-aggressive HOA report type. I would play smart. I would play long. And when I struck, she wouldn't see it coming. I leaned forward and tossed another log onto the fire. The flames jumped higher, briefly then settled back into their steady burn. Somewhere across the street, behind her blinds, Kerren was probably watching, waiting for the next excuse, planning her next move. She had no idea. She had just lit the wrong fuse. By the following week, the notices started showing up. A bright orange slip was taped to my mailbox with the bold print stating violation of HOA noise regulation. 2 days later, another one appeared this time, citing trash bins left on the curb past. Collection time. I looked at the timestamp on the photo they attached. The bins were still out at 8 a.m. Trash had been picked up at 7. I stood in the driveway staring at it. The absurdity of it all might have been funny if it didn't feel like a slow-motion ambush. Kerren was methodical. She wasn't loud, not in the traditional sense. She didn't scream. She didn't confront. She whispered in the right ears. She documented with obsessive detail. She didn't want a scene. She wanted slow suffocation, and I was beginning to choke. The real blow came when I saw her post in the neighborhood Facebook group. It was vague at first, no names, just insinuations. Some residents think it's okay to endanger children by running open flames in their backyards. I just want us all to be safe. The comments exploded. Dozens of replies. Some supported her. Others asked for clarification. A few pushed back. Then Kerren posted a blurry photo of my backyard. From her upstairs window. Taken at night. The glow of the fire pit. Unmistakable. That's when it clicked. She wasn't just calling the fire department to ruin a night. She was laying the foundation for something bigger. She wanted to build a case. A narrative me. The reckless neighbor. The hazard. The outsider. The isolation came next. I waved to the Johnsons across the street. They didn't wave back. The Corteses canceled the block. Barbecue they had invited me to. People I had lived among for years began looking through me like I didn't exist. Kerren's poison was subtle, but effective. I knocked on her door the following Friday. Not with anger, with something closer to exhaustion. She opened it, wearing the same pastel sweater from before, and a smile that never reached her eyes. "I just want to talk," I said. Her smile widened. "That's what the Facebook group is for. Civil discussion, I encourage it. You don't have to keep reporting me. I'm not breaking any rules. The fire pit is legal. The dog is quiet. The trash bins were out for 1 hour. Come on. Can't we just coexist?" She tilted her head. "I understand this must be frustrating, but when it comes to safety, I won't compromise. You may not see the risks, but I do, and I act accordingly." She didn't close the door. She just looked at me like I was a child, one who had misbehaved and didn't understand why he was being punished. Then she said, "Maybe if you followed the rules a little more carefully, we wouldn't be having this conversation." Then she shut it. Soft. Precise. Final I walked home with my fists clenched so hard my nails dug into my palms. I didn't feel rage. I felt insulted, dismissed, belittled. She didn't care about fire safety. She cared about control. And I had just handed her another inch that night. I found a sign duct taped to my mailbox. Bright red with bold letters, Fire Hazard Zone. No signature, but it didn't need one. I tore it down and stood in my driveway staring at her house across the street. One light on upstairs. Curtains drawn. Probably watching, always watching. I went inside, sat at my computer and typed fire safety residential codes. Propane usage deck clearance regulations. I read until my eyes blurred, until the anger in my chest started to mold itself into something sharper, more useful. Then I found it. A clause buried in the local fire code. Outdoor heating appliances must be placed a minimum distance from combustible structures. Wood decks required fire shielding or clearance. Propane tanks prohibited under. Certain overhangs. I clicked through my phone, found the photos I had taken at last year's neighborhood mixer. Kerren had hosted it on her back deck. String lights, gas heater, blazing under a wooden awning. The heater was positioned less than 2 feet from the house. The siding was vinyl. Highly flammable. I zoomed in. There it was, a propane tank, hooked directly into the base of the unit. Unsecured. Unshielded. Suddenly, I couldn't hear the crickets outside, only the blood rushing in my ears. She had been hosting illegal setups for years. She had used that heater every fall, in plain view, and no one had called it in. No one had reported it, because no one was watching her. Until now, I saved the photos, backed them up. I started taking new ones from my window, from the sidewalk. Every time she lit it, every time she sat outside under her pretty little lights, with her heater humming beside her siding, she thought she was the law. She thought she was untouchable. But now, I had the match, and I was ready to strike. The heater flickered on again the following Saturday, just as dusk folded over the neighborhood. I stood at my upstairs window, camera in hand lens pointed directly at Kerren's deck. She had guests over, 3 women perched around her patio table, laughing over glasses of wine. The gas heater glowed orange beneath the wooden eaves. The propane tank sat beside the vinyl siding, exactly where the code said, "It never should." I clicked the shutter 3 times, zoomed in, got the angle, got the faces, got the danger. She didn't notice me. Not yet. Not through her carefully curated life, where she was the hero of her own HOA fantasy novel. She probably thought I had given up, that I was licking my wounds, but I wasn't. I was gathering evidence, 1 photo at a time. I wasn't going to her. I was going above her. Monday morning, I walked into the city fire department, not the station near my house. The main office downtown. I wanted this official, clean, unmistakable. I sat down with a code enforcement officer, middle-aged, tired eyes. Clipboard in hand, I placed the photos on the desk one by one. I explained the deck, the clearance, the propane, the proximity to the vinyl, the repeated use during gatherings. He nodded slowly, made notes, asked a few questions. Then he said, "This could result in a serious citation, possibly a fine if it's proven. Did she receive prior warnings?" She called the department on me. I said, "For a legal fire pit, she's playing watchdog, but she's breaking bigger rules than anyone else on this block." He didn't smile, didn't frown either, just nodded. "We'll look into it." If you have more documentation, forward it to this email. I left the office with my heart pounding, not out of guilt, but from the thrill of precision. I didn't need to scream, I just had to be smarter. The following Thursday, the fire inspector came, plain city truck badge on his belt, clipboard tucked under one arm. I was in my garage working when he pulled up. I watched him walk straight across the street. Kerren opened the door. Bright smile, confident posture. Like she thought she was getting a thank you. Letter, then she saw the badge. Her face twitched, just slightly. I stayed hidden behind the car. Watching, he pointed Horyudi, looked over her shoulder. His voice was calm but direct. She hesitated, then stepped aside. They walked to the backyard. She tried to smile again, tried to gesture at something else, probably offering lemonade or pointing out her begonias. But he didn't. Laugh, didn't nod. He inspected the heater, measured with a small tape, checked the clearance, bent down to the propane tank. I saw her mouth moving. Fast, sharp, like she was trying to explain, to defend, to justify, but the clipboard came out. The pen scratched, the surface, and she stopped talking. He walked back around front, got into his truck, drove off. Kerren stood in her yard, frozen, holding something in her hand, a yellow paper, her version of the orange notice she once proudly stuck to my mailbox. I walked back into my house. Didn't say a word, didn't need to. The next day, the heater was gone. The propane tank disconnected and rolled into her garage. Her Facebook group post vanished, deleted. No apology, no explanation, just gone. But the story wasn't over, not for me. She had played her game in the shadows. I wanted the light, so I posted in the same group, short and simple. Just a reminder to neighbors to follow all city fire codes, especially when using propane heaters near wood structures. Safety. First, let's all set a good example. The comments came fast, some supportive, some confused. Then someone asked, "Wasn't Kerren using one of those heaters all the time?" And then another comment. She even hosted last fall's wine night with that thing right under her awning. Screenshots started appearing. Old pictures, group photos, wine glasses, and always in the corner. That heater, Kerren didn't comment, didn't defend. She stayed silent. The queen had left the chessboard. And just when it seemed like things might settle. One more twist fell into place. A neighbor, Mrs. Langston, posted in the thread, "My son works for the city." Said someone filed a formal report. Said it was a big violation. Yikes, I didn't reply. Didn't need to. I just turned off my notifications and let the thread burn on its own, for once the fire was someone else's problem. A week passed, and the silence was louder than any siren. Kerren no longer walked her dog past my house. Her blinds stayed shut, even on bright mornings. The woman who once policed every noise and nuance of the neighborhood had retreated into a self-imposed exile. But I knew her type. Silence didn't mean surrender. It meant strategy. She was plotting nursing her wounds in the shadows, waiting for the moment to strike back. So I stayed alert, watched the group, checked the mailbox daily, prepared for retaliation. But it didn't come. At least not in the way I expected. It came through an invitation. A surprise announcement in the Facebook group. Kerren was hosting a community safety seminar open to all neighbors, guest speaker from the fire. Department refreshments provided. RSVP encouraged. It was audacious. Brazen, she wanted to reclaim the narrative, repaint herself as the guardian of the community, as if the citation, the photos, the embarrassment had never happened. I stared at the post for several minutes. Then I clicked. Attending. Saturday came fast. I arrived 5 minutes early. Kerren's backyard had been transformed, folding chairs in neat rows, a table of lemonade and cookies, a portable PA system plugged into an outlet near her deck, and at the front, a projector screen showing the City Fire Code homepage. The irony was suffocating. Neighbors trickled in, some chatting, some cautious, many whispering as they glanced around. And then Kerren appeared, polished, poised, wearing a cream-colored blazer and a smile as wide as ever. She welcomed everyone, thanked them for coming, gestured to the fire department liaison standing by the screen. Then she began. She spoke about vigilance, about responsibility, about looking out for each other. Her voice was calm, measured, almost hypnotic, and I could see the tide starting to shift again. People nodded, laughed politely. She was rebuilding her throne, one sentence at a time, until the officer took the mic. He thanked Kerren, then launched into the basics of residential fire safety. He mentioned clearance, ventilation, the risks of using unshielded propane heaters under combustible materials. And then, without hesitation, he held up a laminated photo. This is an example of what not to do. This unit was recently sited in this very neighborhood. It was operating under improper conditions and could have easily caused a fire. Gasps scattered through the crowd. Kerren froze. Her lips parted slightly, eyes locked on the photo in his hand. It was her deck, her heater, the tank, the siding, everything. The officer didn't name her. He didn't need to. Everyone turned slowly in her direction. Some whispered, some leaned back in their chairs. Her carefully constructed illusion collapsed. In a heartbeat, I didn't smile, didn't gloat. I just sat still, letting the heat of the moment settle around us. Like summer air, Kerren stepped forward, tried to speak. Her voice cracked, just slightly. Well, that was addressed promptly. The issue was corrected, before it became a problem. We're here to move forward, right? But the mood had shifted. The whispers didn't stop. Someone got up. Then another, within minutes. Half the chairs were empty. People mumbled goodbyes, avoided eye contact. No one touched. The cookies, I waited until only a few stragglers remained. Then I approached the officer, introduced myself, thanked him for the presentation. He shook my hand and said, "You're the one who filed the report." Good eye. That could have turned nasty. Kerren stood a few feet away, pretending to adjust cords on the PA system, but her hands were shaking. I caught her eye, held it for just a moment, then turned and walked away. That night the post disappeared. The group fell quiet. Kerren stopped posting altogether. The Queen had finally abdicated in the weeks that followed. The neighborhood began to breathe again. The Johnsons waved. The Cortezes dropped off banana bread. A few even joked about starting a new group. One without drama, without tyrants. One afternoon, as I was cleaning up the yard, a package arrived. No return label. Inside was a small box, wrapped in tissue paper. At the bottom, a single item, ceramic garden gnome, painted to look like a firefighter. In one hand a hose, in the other, a tiny propane tank. There was no note, but I didn't need one. I placed it near the fire pit, right where the flames could warm it. And for the first time in months, I laughed out loud. The fire was still burning, but this time it was mine to light.